Welcome to Lawyers Without Billboards, where we break down family law and other areas of the law. No gimmicks, no legal jargon, just real, unfiltered talk from real lawyers. Join your hosts, Steve, Patty, Jimmy, and Alexa, partners at Shewmaker Lewis, a law firm based in Atlanta, Georgia. Every episode, they tackle the legal questions that matter most: divorce, custody, child support, alimony, and everything in between. They'll pull back the curtain to give you real insights on what happens inside the courtroom and beyond.
Hello and welcome back to the latest episode of Lawyers Without Billboards, brought to you by Shewmaker Lewis in Atlanta, Georgia. Hey, joke of the day.
Oh boy.
Anybody?
Can't wait.
Why did the pony ask for a glass of water?
Why?
He was a little horse.
Oh,
Did you just cry?
we like ponies.
Ponies are adorable.
Yes, for people who don't know,
Yeah.
Especially ponies with one eye.
Patty and I have one daughter, and our one daughter has one horse.
We have a horse.
We have
She
a
used to
horse.
rent a pony.
The horse is actually titled in my name.
Thank God for that. You can have it.
We've already learned that doesn't matter, Patty.
That's right. Title doesn't.
Is that what we would call it, depreciating asset?
Yes. Yes.
But, you know, as I say,
Or a money pit.
the money pit that I spent on that horse is an insurance policy against unwanted teenage pregnancy and junior college.
There you go.
So in any event, here we are,
Today,
Lawyers Without Billboards.
and
What are we talking
today,
about?
we're talking about, we're going to do a deep dive into alimony.
Deep dive. All right. No safety net.
No safety net.
Jump in.
It's a free for all.
Trapeze.
Hope you could swim.
Safety net and
Hope you could
trapeze.
swim,
We're
Judy.
just-
We're deep diving, baby.
We're just
All
bench
right.
jumping.
All right. Is alimony...
Without parachutes.
Okay, stop. Break, stop. Y'all shut up.
Okay.
Okay.
Everybody get quiet.
Alimony. Is alimony dead in the state of Georgia?
No.
No.
Is it...
Very much alive.
Okay. All right. But... All right, Steve, you've been practicing for how many years?
I think right at 19.
All right, you've been practicing for 19 years. In that 19 years, have you seen a reduction in the amount of alimony that's being awarded?
Yes.
Why do you think that is?
I think there are more and more judges that are less impressed with alimony. I think it's becoming, while on the one hand, I will say I think it's being awarded less frequently and for shorter durations. I'm also seeing it work both ways, though. I'm seeing men get alimony for women.
I have yet to have a case where a man got alimony. Have you?
Got it, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah?
In DeKalb County, actually.
Yeah.
Or court ordered or?
Now it's by agreement.
Okay.
We get ahead of ourselves here with all our war stories. What is alimony?
All right. So, and this goes back to an earlier episode where Steve, enlightened with us with his metaphor for alimony.
Fumigated you with my vast
You
wisdom.
did. You did. Can you
Briefly say it.
those? Yeah, like in 5
Sure.
seconds.
If you want alimony, you have to clear a hurdle. The first hurdle is need. You have to demonstrate that you need it, and then you have to clear the other hurdle that the other party that you want it from has the ability to pay it. And then the court can also consider other factors like the lifestyle to which you have become accustomed, whether or not there's been bad behavior, to include adultery, which can outright ban alimony, and stuff like that. How's that?
Very good.
Brief enough?
Very good. How about conduct?
Conduct factors into it.
How so?
Well, you have to understand first and foremost that alimony is a discretionary act. At the discretion, let me stop. Break. Let me explain something to you. If you look at the child support statutes in Georgia, it's over 80 pages of law. Mind-numbing to read
Yep.
it all. The law in Georgia, as I tell potential clients, is basically 18th century law. It's about 3, maybe 4 sentences in the code about alimony. Basically, those 4 sentences say the finder of fact, the judge or the jury in Georgia, can award alimony at their discretion if you demonstrate need and ability to pay. It is basically that simple. It is basically non-regulated, unlike child support.
All right, but let me read from the statute and you tell me what you think about this, because this is also in the statute.
Read away.
A party shall not be entitled to alimony if it is established by a preponderance of the evidence that the separation between the parties was caused by that party's adultery or desertion.
Yes.
All right, talk to me about adultery.
Well, if I'm seeking alimony, I want some alimony from you, but you prove by a preponderance, which means just barely more evidence for it than not. You prove by that standard that I, the one seeking alimony, committed adultery, and that adultery led to the breakup of the marriage, or desertion, and that desertion led to the breakup of the marriage, then the court cannot award me alimony if I seek it. That's what the law says.
Okay. Anybody have any experience with this?
Deep experience, but so do I.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
Alexa?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've definitely had the case where it's been alleged that my client had committed adultery, although we were sort of able to prove that wasn't the case, and got alimony on a 20-plus year marriage.
She didn't commit adultery, or didn't lead to the breakup of the marriage?
So she definitely committed adultery early in the marriage. The parties reconciled after the fact.
Well, you got to dwell on that. But go ahead.
However,
You got to go back to that.
The husband's position at that point was, well, essentially you've already stepped out, so I'm going to take advantage of this to my own sexual gratification, and I'm going to now pay you to have said relationships with other individuals.
He was pimping.
But he was also filming.
Oh, he was pimping and filming.
He was pimping and filming. So when I got that petition from the other side, my client,
it's hard out there for a pimp.
And we're not going to touch on it, but there was a lot more than just
a lot more than just that. But when I got the petition from opposing counsel alleging my client had committed adultery, I had to pick up the phone and say, "You've not read your client's text messages, have you?" And in fact, my client was in a new relationship at that point, but it wasn't the cause of the breakdown of the marriage.
But hold on a second, because I take for granted that most of the people calling us about adultery are not going to have either them or their spouse pimping them out for sex film. Let's take it back to a simpler concept. Oftentimes, somebody calling in doesn't want to pay alimony, and they say, she had an affair.
Yep.
I'll pick on her for the moment. She had an affair, and my next question to the guy on the phone is usually, how long ago was the affair? Oh, well, we've been married 30 years, and it was in the first 3 years of marriage. I'm like, okay, stop, because this goes to your point.
and we've had 4 kids since
Well,
then.
that's my next question. In the last 26 years you've been married to her still, and you didn't break up with her back when you caught her on the affair, how many times did you have sex with her? How many kids did you have? Because an act of sexual intercourse after you learn of the affair is what?
Reconciliation.
Reconciliation, and that's something that's very easily missed.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And nothing looks as ridiculous as a party coming into court saying, I shouldn't have to pay alimony because I caught her in an affair 26 years ago. I mean, a judge is just going to look at, I would never want to be that attorney standing next to that guy or that girl. I don't want to be the one standing there going, yeah, because the judge is going to look at me like, dude, I know you, and what are you doing?
Yeah, what are you doing?
Reconciliation is a big defense. And that's
To adultery.
Right, to adultery. That's why I wanted to dwell on that, because your case is fascinating, but it's not going to be the typical case.
No, definitely.
All right. But
It's a good case.
the statute says that conduct matters when it comes to adultery, or the court can consider conduct. Okay, aside from
What conduct matters when it comes to alimony.
alimony. So, setting adultery aside, what kind of conduct have you seen that's mattered to judges in the award of alimony?
Well, a case I was just watching yesterday over in Barrow County, when the father is secretly recorded talking to the young children and saying, your mommy likes penises. She puts them in her mouth. Saying this to little children, I think that could be a factor.
It's not great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It could enhance alimony
Sure.
if it's the mom in this case, or it could detract.
That's making it sound like alimony is punitive.
Yeah.
That the judge can use it to punish.
Well, whenever you consider
It's in the judge's
conduct,
discretion.
whenever
so-
you consider conduct and you have discretion, there is a punitive edge to that. Whether you like it or not, I want to say that.
And I think efforts at employment is a pretty significant one. When you have, like, for example, you have a divorce that's been pending for 2 years, and let's say that the parties are exercising 50-50 on a temporary basis, and mom has made absolutely no efforts during that time to seek any sort of employment, do anything from an education standpoint, anything to help her earning capacity.
Because her attorney told her to sit there like a
Right. This is a terrible idea.
Well, this is a sidebar, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
sidebar.
There are attorneys that will tell their clients to not get a job during the divorce.
Yep.
I mean, what do you guys think about that?
But I
think it's terrible
think
advice.
I think it's terrible advice, because I think you go in front of a judge or a jury, and also kind of like the entire idea of alimony nowadays, I think part of it,
Rehabilitative.
well, and I think a lot of it probably, you look at the growing number of female judges who have worked very hard to get where they are, and then you have some women who come before the court and they're like, I can't do anything, and they're like, okay, I worked my ass off to get
all
where
four of us have been in front of judges, and most judges are coming out of DA's offices. Not all, but most of them. And you get a female judge who's been a career prosecutor, a government employee, not making a ton of money, who's sitting there, and she's got deputies, bailiffs, staff attorneys, secretaries on her team that are all making, county wages, which are not huge salaries, and you get a lot of times it's a woman, not always, but a lot of them, like one very famous case that Patty had that took 9 years, it was a man, but you get a lot of women who just sit there, and the first question is, do you have a disability? Uh-huh. Oh, okay, then you've applied for Social Security disability? No. Or, yeah, I have, but I haven't gotten an answer yet. What is your disability?
Or I've been denied 3 times.
Let's watch some video of you playing pickup basketball from last month. Let's see something that shows that you have no problem whatsoever doing stuff, but you can't work.
Yep.
And it's been 2-3 years in some cases you haven't worked. Has your attorney advised you not to get a job? Objection. Okay, fine. Don't answer the question. Then just pause for effect. Let it sink in.
And it's sitting there, and the judge is like, yeah, well, I know they did. And so, no, I think that is something that, in my experience, especially in the last few years, I think that's something that judges are looking at is, okay, the spouse seeking alimony, are they actually taking any affirmative steps to improve their situation?
Right.
Yeah, and I often have judges at the temporary saying, ma'am or sir, you need to get a job.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is your plan?
Right.
What
is
you
your
doing?
plan? But let's back up to something that Steve said, and I want to ask you guys a question. Do you think that male judges are more inclined to give alimony than female judges?
Yes.
Yes.
The older the judge,
Yes.
the whiter the judge. Yeah, I think older guys are more. I'll probably get a lot of guff from some people who call in. I'll probably get some old white male judges that go, Steve, you're way off base. But yeah, from what I've seen, the further you get out of the metro area, the older and whiter your judges. I hate to bring color and race into it, but yeah, I think there's a paternalistic theme that runs through this. And yeah.
I will tell you, I had a case several years ago where I represented the wife, long-term marriage. We were seeking alimony. Before trial, we had a pretrial conference, and this is in advance. So a few weeks or months in advance of the trial, we had a pretrial conference with the judge, a female judge. And the female judge, in pretrial conference basically told me that she wasn't going to give my client any alimony. So of course I'm like, okay, we've got a female judge, I can get alimony, we need to settle. My client didn't want to settle. We go to trial, and the judge had a senior judge sitting that day on her behalf, and it was an old male judge, and the other side certainly was surprised because when they heard the female judge say no alimony, they're like, no, we're not going to agree to any alimony. And
Sure.
Okay.
totally different result.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go back though, and I know Jimmy Alexei never served in the military, but you've gotten a lot of benefit from the years with Patty and I, and we both did.
Osmosis. Yeah,
Exactly.
And there's a thing. There's know the enemy being the opposing counsel or the opposing party, and there's know the terrain, the lay of the land, and that's the judge in a lot of cases. You can look academically at the statute and say, well, I've got 2 people married 25 years, and I've got a housewife, and I've got a guy that makes $300,000 a year. This is a great alimony case.
Sure.
But that's looking at the problem academically. You have to lay on top of that another layer, which is reality.
It's your WET analysis, weather, enemy, terrain.
Yeah, so if you go to Gwinnett County, where you have, I think, 20 Superior Court judges that are very fond of punting cases to magistrates, and these magistrate judges are great judges. I like a bunch of them, but I honestly believe that the magistrates sit in a back room playing spades, and then somebody comes in and goes, hey, Judge so-and-so wants you on this divorce case. Okay, boss, they go in and they do it, and they do a great job. But the point is, if I'm going in there expecting elected Judge A and I get Magistrate B, if I'm only looking at this thing academically, I can be off my game.
Yep.
Now, another example is I've been doing this 19 years. I can't possibly tell you what every judge in Metro Atlanta, because there's a few hundred of them, what everyone does for alimony.
Right.
If I'm not doing my job, if I don't pick up the phone and call 5 friends of mine, 5 other lawyers, and go, hey, I got a case where alimony is the issue, and I'm doing some research on this judge because I'm just not sure.
Yeah, but that's hard because it's so fact and circumstance dependent.
Yeah.
But I still do it and I call friends of mine, other lawyers, and go,
Well,
hey,
you're just super lawyer.
No, I'm not super lawyer.
He has to pay for that title.
How many plaques do you have?
More than you.
Patty, I want to go back to the first thing you said in the very beginning about when you kind of asked Steve, like whether or not alimony is dead. I think what we're looking at now is we've moved really far from traditional gender roles. We have a lot more two-income or dual-income households. And we also have a lot less long-term marriages.
Fair.
So I think a lot of that is going to play into how often we're seeing alimony, because you've got marriages that are, 10 years and less constantly coming up.
Let me ask you
30
this.
years is significant, right?
Let me ask you this. How long do you have to be married to get alimony?
So we talked about this the other day, and I really think you can. I'm not sure the length of time necessarily matters, because I think you can have a 3-year marriage.
Matters is not what she asked you. Non-responsive. Objection, non-responsive. She said, how long do you have to be married? Not how much does it matter. How long?
No, that's what I'm saying.
Bright line
There's
rule?
no bright.
There you go.
There's no bright line
Check
rule.
out
That's
the
what I'm
big
saying.
brain on a list.
Listen, I'm saying you can have a 3-year marriage and still get alimony because you've got a wife who's got a 3-year-old.
You could have a
Who does
You
it?
could have a 1-year marriage.
Absolutely.
Theoretically.
Absolutely.
I mean, that would be impressive.
I mean,
but, okay.
I mean, even if it's go away money, it's $200 a month for 3 months. Cool,
Yeah,
you
but
can do it on a year.
that's agreement of the parties, not
Sure, absolutely.
not court ordered.
I generally don't take the case of the 5-year marriage asking for alimony in front of a judge, because usually it's a small marital estate. You're usually looking at something you're probably going to settle. But I don't think there's no bright line rule on how many years you have to be married to get alimony.
There's no bright line rule, but that's where it's nice to be talking to other attorneys, because most attorneys that I deal with are going to be like, 5-7-year marriage. We're not talking about alimony. We got that. But where does it really kick in? Is it 15 years? Is it 17? Certainly by 20 or 25.
Yeah, I think 20 is a big kind of mark.
Yeah, but you're assuming a disparity of income that would lead to that,
That's
right?
what I'm headed to next. What do you say? Pretend I'm the person calling you. I want alimony, and you ask me, how much do I make?
I'm not paying you alimony.
Well, that's not, and let's say I say
You're paying him child
let's say that I say I make $75,000
paying him
a
forced
year.
support.
$75,000 a year, but my husband makes $1 million a year. $75,000 a year is what I make.
Sure.
My husband makes $1 million. And say the marriage is 15 years. Am I going to get alimony?
Well, how much property are you
Yeah,
going to
I was
get?
going to say, what's your marital estate? Because maybe not.
What you've just interjected into the mix is that the amount of property you walk away from the marriage with, in addition to your income, matters.
Yeah.
Right, because it impacts your need for alimony.
Right.
Hurdle number 1, remember?
Completely agree with you. But these are the points that we have to, yes, very good job, ladies. These are the points that we have to drive home with people, that alimony is not as simple as a basic math problem.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't know what else to say.
Well, I want to ask you guys a couple more questions.
Sure. I'm going to drink my coffee.
Drink your coffee. Okay. Periodic alimony versus lump sum alimony. First of all, what is periodic alimony? Jimmy over there, grinning, smiling, smirking.
You're paying Steve $3,000 a month for a period of 60 months.
Okay.
That is not periodic alimony.
Well,
That is lump sum alimony.
It depends.
It depends.
How it ends.
does it end if Steve dies?
If it's periodic, it does.
Does it end if I die?
Yes.
It ends.
You have
Does it end
you
if
have
he-
just injected. You have changed the facts. You have injected a contingency. Without a contingency, $1,000 a month for 60 months. Period. End of sentence.
It was
is lump sum.
$3,000.
Whatever is lump sum alimony. If you inject a contingency to cease if you die, or to cease if the Steelers win the Super Bowl, any contingency will do. Doesn't matter. Any contingency will do. Okay.
Right, that makes it periodic.
$3,000 a month for 60 months to terminate early if both of Jimmy's testicles drop. It doesn't matter what the contingency is.
Okay, you're so smart. Then well, how is that different from lump sum?
Lump sum is exactly what I said before. It is not subject to a contingency.
A certain amount.
It's a lump sum. It's a lump sum, but to your point, it can be paid over a
Correct.
series of time periods, so long as it's not modifiable.
And I'm
so
not so smart. I've just had my ass kicked so many times in court by better lawyers that it's made me better eventually.
eventually.
Cost me a bunch of time and money. Yeah. Now, what most people don't know, in fact, a lot of lawyers don't grasp this, is that alimony runs for a period of time in the future. And it is paid from the estate of the other party after division. So husband and wife divorce, or two partners divorce. They both get stuff. Now that stuff belongs to them and them alone. And alimony is paid from one party's stuff to the other party. Now, it can be paid over a period of time, like we talked about, with a contingency built in. Now, how do we modify alimony? We even going to talk about that today?
No, that's a whole other day.
Okay, then we'll talk about that later.
All right, but let me throw out another example that we don't often think about. We put it a lot in settlement agreements, and sometimes it's even court ordered, where one spouse post-divorce has a life insurance policy insuring, in this case we'll use the husband, insuring his life, and if he dies, then the benefit goes to his ex-wife. The husband paying those insurance premiums is a form of alimony. Yes? No? You agree?
Oh, you're asking.
I agree.
Yeah. You agree? Everybody agrees with that? All right. So then let me ask you the question. Can that be modified?
The payment of the life insurance?
Is it
The requirement to have the life insurance, if paying the premiums is alimony.
Well,
then I would say yeah.
do they have provisions that allow them to modify, or do they waive?
They did not waive. They did not.
Okay.
In this hypothetical,
Specifically waives it.
I think if nothing is in there from a waiver standpoint, then I think that could be modified.
something to think about when you have those life insurance provisions in a divorce decree or a settlement agreement. That.
Well, I think if you have a provision in there that it's so long as that has to be in effect for so long as
There's an obligation.
there is an obligation or in the amount of the outstanding obligation.
Yeah. How about there's a provision that wife is going to continue to make the car payments on husband's car post-divorce?
I think that's alimony.
It's alimony. Yeah.
Think it's modifiable?
Yeah, I think it can be. If you don't say it's non-modifiable, it's
Okay.
presumptively modifiable, right?
Okay. So that's a debt provision, right? That
Sure, yeah.
we sometimes see.
What is it, period?
Well, unless you call it unless you specify as property division, right? So if you say wife will pay X amount towards the car until it's paid off as property division because it's part of the equitable division of property and she's, whatever, I think that would be modifiable. But if you don't,
Are you sure? I mean, that's form over substance, right?
Here is an interesting issue that I have recently dealt with, and that the parties in their settlement agreement from their divorce said that if and wife is paying alimony to the husband in the settlement agreement, that if husband enters into a meretricious relationship, it's an automatic termination.
Which is interesting.
That they don't have to even take it to court. She can just automatically stop paying.
But who
And
determines if it's a meretricious relationship?
Well, so the Supreme Court of Georgia, actually, there's a case directly on point with this, which was basically parties can contract to whatever they want. And if he did, in fact, enter into that meretricious relationship, you cannot hold wife in contempt of that.
Okay.
Still doesn't answer my question.
What is all right? But for our listeners, what's a meretricious relationship?
Effectively, cohabitation doesn't matter the opposite sex, whether there is a sexual component. There's been a number of cases where they've talked about sharing of expenses and things like that, basically living under the same roof.
It's a marriage. It's a marriage-like relationship.
Yeah.
Is alimony taxable to the receiving spouse?
Not right now.
That's how
Used to be.
it used to be.
A good sell too. Like
Used to be.
I'll do more on alimony.
Used to be and might be again one day, but not right now.
Not right now.
Not right now.
That is
It
no
used to be a great
longer
sell,
something
too.
that can be included from that tax return.
Yep.
All right, what else we got on alimony?
That's
On the subject.
That's it. I'd love to hear from our 5 listeners. If they have questions.
Anything else, we're going to end up in a new episode.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of deep dives into alimony, like modification, and some of your war stories.
Yep, and
would be instructive on this stuff.
We're going to talk about one of these episodes. We're going to talk about the live-in lover statute.
Live-in lover. It just sounds so lascivious,
I know.
sleazy.
Paramours and things.
It sounds like something P. Diddy would be doing.
But we'll talk about that and modifications of alimony.
Yeah.
And Costco did not provide that.
Is it meretricious if there's 1,000 bottles of baby oil in the house? I just don't know.
It's something. It's
I don't think it's meretricious, but it's
Well, listen, this is a deep dive into alimony, the basics of alimony, and we're happy to talk to you more about alimony. Just call Shewmaker and Lewis, and until then, this is Lawyers Without Billboards.
That's it for this episode of Lawyers Without Billboards. If you found this episode helpful, make sure to follow and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more resources or to get in touch with us, visit shewmakerandlewis.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.